Hey everybody, Jim Crocker from Boardroom Metrics. I really want to thank everybody for joining this webcast. Today's webcast, role of the board in strategic planning. I've been involved in corporate governance and strategic planning for many, many years. What I'd like to cover today, this is really aimed at, it's aimed at boards of directors, but really it's aimed at anybody that's interested in strategic planning. So why a strategic planning from a corporate governance perspective? Where does it fit? What is a strategic plan? Every consultant will have their own definition, and I've got mine. I can tell you that after many, many years of consulting to clients on corporate governance, we focus on keeping planning as, if I can put it this way, as simple as possible, because we truly believe that when plans are best understood, they are best executed. We've seen way too many very complicated plans that have never had the chance to be executed properly. So I want to talk about that. What is the board's role in strategic planning? That's a question we get all of the time from boards of directors. And then lessons from other organizations. Thought there are a couple of quick lessons I think that have an impact in terms of boards executing strategic plans. So I thought that might be helpful to share that. I'm going to start with the role of the board. This ties into where does strategic planning fit. And again, we like to keep the role of the board fairly simple. We've been doing this for years. So we see three elements for a role of the board. First and foremost, number one is to identify killer risks. So what are those? Key role of the board is to understand what's coming at the organization. And we would say there's four authors of risks to an organization. There's legal risk, do something illegal, get in trouble. There's financial risk, sign a bad contract and get in trouble. There's external risk, which is the marketplace or anything outside the organization that could jeopardize the organization. And then there's internal risk. There's ways of operating poorly that can get the organization in trouble. So the first role of the board is to take a look at those four authors of risk and identify what the key risks might be. Armed with that, the second role of the board is to implement a strategic plan. And don't know how many of you have thought of this, but why have a strategic plan? There are, from our perspective, two reasons to have a strategic plan. First is to mitigate risk. Having identified what the key risks are, it's really, really important to put a strategy in place to mitigate, especially those big killer ones that could get the organization in trouble. The second reason to have a strategic plan is to execute the mission better. Even if none of our organizations had any risk, we're all our organizations exist for a reason, and generally we would all like to do whatever it is we're doing better. So we put in place strategies to help us do that, to execute our mission better. And then the final role of the board of directors is to measure the CEO. And the reason the board needs to measure the CEO is the CEO is that person who boards put in place to execute their strategic direction. We don't always think of it that way, and I can say from experience, especially in circumstances where the strategic plan isn't that well laid out or the board isn't clear on the role of the strategic plan in the organization. Sometimes it also isn't clear what the role of the CEO is. But ultimately, the role of the CEO isn't just to operate the day-to-day. The role of the CEO is to execute the strategic direction, right? That day-to-day really should be the execution of the strategic direction of the organization. So three roles of a board of directors, they're all related, right? Identify killer risks. Secondly, put in place a strategic plan that mitigates those risks and executes the mission better. And then third, put in place and measure the person responsible for executing the strategic plan. That's the role of the board of directors. So let's keep that then focused on strategic planning. Just want to share some really, really simple examples of the relationship between risk. I said earlier that key reason for having a strategic plan is to mitigate risk. So I've just chosen some very simple examples of risk leading to strategy. And this comes from just looking at the marketplace, clients we work with, and others. I do a lot of work in the distribution space. Amazon for years has been a risk to anybody in the distribution space. You just never know when Amazon is going to get involved in your space. And what's been the outcome of that? What strategies have organizations put in place to help mitigate that risk? Well, a lot of them have been moved to start their own e-commerce business, right? It's kind of like competing head-to-head with Amazon, but not really. But it certainly helped move e-commerce and organizations having their own e-commerce portals has certainly moved more quickly as organizations compete with Amazon. cyber hacking and hacking of our digital data is something that's going on as I'm doing this. Our sites are being hacked, our businesses are being hacked, boards are increasingly aware of that. One of the most common strategies, and it's getting ahead of cyber and hacking and stopping it completely is difficult. But auditing it and fixing, whatever the audit turns up is a fundamental strategy that lots of organizations are putting in place to mitigate that risk. Up until about 3 weeks ago with the coronavirus, 4 weeks ago, talent shortage was one of the key risks I was hearing from all of my clients. And just for example, one of the strategies, a client that I know put in place was to have their own company university. They use it as a way to attract solid talent to their organization, and they use it as a way of retaining that talent in the organization. And then the final risk, an external risk that lots of organizations have faced over the past year is the tariffs. And that has had an impact. If they were sourcing, for example, from China, it's helped them change their sourcing strategies. So they're now sourcing from other places potentially other than China. These are purely examples, but they are examples of risk leading to strategies that organizations, visible strategies that you can see. Also wanted to, similar examples of mission leading to strategy. So mission is that thing that we do, and how do we do it better? I've spent a lot of time, certainly recently, I've been in Walmart a few times, and one of Walmart's missions is essentially to stay low cost, is to provide low prices to their customers. And every time I go into a Walmart, what I see is everything is moving to self-serve. It's pretty tough to find a live checkout anymore. They're self-serve checkouts. That is a key part of the strategy to ensure that costs stay low. See a lot of organizations, have choice, wide choice, broad choice as part of their mission. Certainly online and in other spaces, you're seeing a real move to user-generated content, either content or manufactured products or whatever. But the ability to have greater choice because actual users are providing content has been really, really important. Lots of organizations have a mission of being healthy. And a few years ago, many years ago now, but I still see it. We have a local grocery store. They still have a large organic section, which is part of their mission to deliver healthy groceries. Improve lives. Again, you see organizations who their focus is on improving lives, and they've chosen innovation. How are they going to do that? They're going to continue to innovate with respect to new technologies and new treatments and whatever. So again, I just wanted to sort of demonstrate the link here between mission and strategies. Just quickly, what's in a strategic plan? I'm just going to show this over 3 slides. And as I said earlier, we try to keep this relatively simple. Strategic plans can be way too complicated. We would much rather see a 1-page strategic plan that's really clear on its mission and what I'm about to talk about, and the strategy is really clear on that, than have a huge book that nobody ever looks at. So 3 elements of a strategic plan. Number 1 is the mission. I've talked about that before. Mission, the way we define it, is who do we serve and how do we serve them. We find that by getting organizations and boards really clear on who they're serving and how they're doing that, it actually forces some really serious conversation in organizations. You would think organizations, especially ones that have been around a long time, would be clear on that. But you might even want to try this right now. If you think about your own organization, are you clear on who you serve and how you're serving them? But once you get clear on that, that's the mission. And the time frame for mission generally is, I say forever, but missions may evolve over time, but they're going to evolve slowly. If they evolve quickly, that's happened in our organization. It is because, and I hate the term, but it's because literally we had to pivot, that our core competency wasn't being well applied to the market that we were going after. And you see this a lot in organizations, so they make a pivot on that basis and their mission may change, but that should be relatively seldom for that to happen. So number 1, it's important for organizations to have their mission. For a board to do a great job of understanding the strategic plan and doing a good governance job, they must understand the mission of the organization. Following on mission then are the strategic priorities. These sometimes they're called strategic priorities, sometimes they're called pillars. But the strategic priorities and the pillars are those elements that organizations have to focus on over a period of time consistently to execute their mission. And a little tip here for most organizations, if you want to see, even if they don't realize it, if you want to understand what an organization's strategic priorities are, generally take a look at the top line navigation on their website, because it's there that you'll find the 3, 4, 5, 6 things that they're focused on, that they do on a regular basis, right? Which is why it's on their website. Those are the elements. It could be education, it could be networking, it could be working with the government, lobbying, those kinds of things. And it's when you see those on their website, those tend to be the pillars. Those are the elements that organizations execute on a regular basis over time to execute their mission. And that's really where, for most organizations, strategic planning comes in. That's where on a regular sort of 3 to 5 year basis, organizations go back in, test out to make sure they're still on there, got the right mission. But then really it's a case of making sure that we have the right strategic priorities, because strategic priorities will evolve more rapidly than the mission will. There will be strategic priorities that come to an end, that are no longer relevant for whatever reason, and therefore new strategic priorities need to be put in place. And that's really the benefit of strategic planning on a regular sort of 3-year basis. Finally, we have operating plans. Right? And that would be sort of the ultimate level of the strategic plan. And this is really the annual operating plans are really what are the goals we have every year, and what are the work we're going to do on the strategic priorities, right? That's the link here. It's the work we're going to do on those strategic priorities on an annual basis in order to achieve our mission. What you wouldn't expect to see is operating plans where the work that's being done on an annual basis has nothing to do with the strategic priorities. If that's the case, then the organization probably isn't clear on its strategic priorities or doesn't have a good set of strategic priorities. We do know, we see this a fair amount, there is confusion between operating plans and strategic priorities. We have lots of organizations tell us that they're pretty good at strategy, that they focus on it on an annual basis, and they write an annual plan, or they write a strategic plan annually. When we look into that and work with them, generally what we discover, these are not strategic plans. What they're talking about is writing their annual operating plan. And yeah, you do not want to be going in on an annual basis and changing your strategic priorities. You do want to be going, because some of those strategic priorities literally may take, if you're putting in place a new plant or new distribution or expanding worldwide, that's going to take longer than 1 year. Right, as a strategic priority, but the operating plan will define in any given year what it is that we're doing as an organization. So we do tend to see some confusion there between operating plans and strategic priorities. Okay, so 3 elements of a strategic plan: mission, strategic priorities, and operating plans. Get those 3 things right, which from our perspective, you can literally do on 1 page. You can have a good plan for any organization. Talk about mission statement. I just wanted to sort of, again, bringing it to life. There's some good mission statements out there. The Forbes mission statement, to deliver information on the people, ideas, and technologies changing the world to our community of affluent business decision makers. Who's Forbes serving? Forbes is serving affluent business decision makers. How do they do that? By delivering information on the people, ideas, and technologies changing the world. So they're very clear in their mission statement, who they target, who they serve, and how they serve them. Same for LinkedIn. LinkedIn's mission: to connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. Who are they serving? The world's professionals. How? By connecting them to make them more productive and successful. I mentioned Walmart earlier, right? Walmart is pretty clear. We save people money so they can live better. Their mission is extremely clear on that. And as I mentioned earlier, so what you would expect to see in Walmart is examples of, you'd expect to see strategies and tactics that are helping them implement lower costs, that are helping them save money so that they can save people money. And from my perspective, you see absolute consistent execution around that. I mentioned Philips earlier, improving people's lives through meaningful innovation. So the way they're achieving their mission of improving people's lives is through innovation. So all of these organizations are clear on who they're serving and how they're serving them. I wanted to use this example, just a little more detail on an interesting strategic plan. I actually saw this on the Dunkin' Brands website. So the Dunkin' Donuts mission, and it's a bit of this could be tightened up for sure. It's a broad mission: provide a wide range of delicious beverages and baked product in a friendly environment that ensures the best value for money. So what I believe they're saying here is that who they're serving are their customers, and how they serve them is by providing this wide range of delicious beverages. So it's very long. It could be tightened up, but I think they are clear. What they do a great job in their strategic plan, and I say that plan is actually on their website, is identifying their strategic priorities, which are menu innovation, convenience, accessibility, and dining experience. Then they go further, and within that, exactly what I was talking about before, then they go in and delve into what are their annual operating plans. And I believe on their website, what I saw was, I think it was for 2019, so there's under each of their strategic priorities, they had their annual operating priorities. In the case of menu innovation, new beverages, new breakfast sandwiches, craveable donuts, I love that term, craveable, and removal of artificial dyes. So that's the work that was going to be done in the annual operating plans. Goals had been set, budgets had been set around those annual operating plans. You can see how those annual operating plans roll up into their strategic priority of menu innovation, which relates to how they're going to, in fact, achieve their mission of providing a wide range of delicious beverages and baked products. So really, really, really interesting. Sort of, and a really clear, I think, good example. I, again, would challenge you, if I say challenge you, but maybe just take a quick look at your own strategic plans, your own strategic planning. Would it be possible to lay out your strategic plan as simply and clearly as Dunkin' Donuts, as Dunkin' Brands has done here? Because I think this is a great example. What's the board's role in strategic planning? So this becomes now important from a governance perspective. Years ago, many years ago, we used to bump into, most clients seem to have this desire to, feeling that it was up to them to develop a strategic plan, and that's not really the case. Typically, it's the management team in any organization, because they literally work in the business 24/7. The management team is most capable of coming up with a strategic plan recommendation. It's not necessarily for the board to do that, but the board's role is really to sponsor and kick off the strategic planning process, make sure there's a strategic planning process in place, whether that's on an annual basis or on a, every 2 years or every 3 years, but up to the board to ensure that there is a strategic process in place. Certainly the board should be providing expertise to the plan, especially as boards become more and more competency-based. We're bringing people onto the board because they have a particular skill or expertise. It's a real shame to leave them out of the process. So that's different from having them run the process and feel full responsibility for developing it. But certainly important if we have, to include people on the board to find opportunities to bring directors into the planning process to share their expertise. Third thing, validate and approve the plan. So once a plan has been recommended, as I say, typically by the management team, it's up to the board. And this is where the board may need to do a lot of work. It's up to the board to validate. Right? So, hey, do a lot of work to ensure that, in fact, this is the plan that makes sense, and to approve that, and to approve the plan. Once the plan is approved, once the board's done its job of validating the plan and approving it, this is where the strategic plan becomes the board's strategic plan. Right? The board now owns it at this point, and this is the strategic direction that the board is really overseeing as it goes about its governance duties, which leads to the final point: holding the CEO accountable for execution. Talked about this earlier, but the board has once the plan's approved, the board has a serious role of ensuring that the CEO is properly executing the plan. And the way the board would do that is there will have been goals laid out, there will have been hurdles, there will have been timeline laid out, and the board will have various ways of ensuring that the CEO is doing the execution job well. Strategy that we've picked up, certainly learning from clients with respect to strategic planning. First would be mission before vision. Over the years, I've seen lots of confusion in this, with lots of organizations feeling they should start with the vision first, but it's impossible to have a vision, frankly, if you're not clear, if we're not clear who we're serving and how we serve them. So it's really, really important to get clear on that. Certainly we find in consulting with clients, it's just much easier to start there and do the hard work of getting clear on the mission. And from there, it is possible to have, potentially come up with a vision. Visions tend to be more, they're for inspiration and they're for aspiration. We find they're very, very useful to help organizations, the people in organizations, whether it's clients or customers or employees, see some kind of bigger picture that they're trying to get to, but not before it's really, really clear what the mission of the organization is. So start there. As I said before, annual plans are not strategic plans. This is one that we bump into surprisingly often, the confusion between annual plans and strategic plans. As I mentioned also earlier, management should draft the plan proposal. Management should have the competency. They're good business people. They're in the business 24/7. They've got the time that the board won't have to put the plan together. So really leaving up to management to draft the plan proposal is what a lot of organizations are doing. Maximum of 6 strategic priorities, right? The list, organizations are like people. There's only so much that an organization can take on. 6 would be at the high end, but generally the way organizations can handle that many priorities is because different parts of the organization are handling different priorities. But it would be difficult if there were 6 high-level strategic priorities for any one part of the organization to handle all those. So, maximum of 6 seems to make sense. And then number 5, update the risk plan, CO execution every board meeting. This is one of the elements we talk about in good governance, is having the board ensure that they do spend and set aside formal time to take a look at the strategic plan, where we're at, how the CEO is doing, and that kind of thing. Boards tend to spend a lot of time, especially in board meetings, on the financial side. Many boards get sucked into discussing operations, but the real key here is to talk about how are we doing versus the strategic plan. And our belief is that time should be put aside in every board meeting to have that review. Common planning tools, this is always helpful for our clients. The SWOT analysis has been around for 1,000,000 years, but we still find it incredibly helpful. See if this makes sense. But even poorly done, a SWOT analysis can help an organization certainly get the juices going in terms of what's going on in the organization and where we might start in terms of opportunities to do things better. Done well, a SWOT can literally be the key that opens up the organization, opens up direction, opens up, especially the highest levels, provides real insight into how the organization is doing, where it's going, and what the opportunities are. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Keep in mind that strengths and weaknesses are internal. Opportunities and threats are external to the organization. And on the right-hand side, the 4-quadrant matrix, really useful. The axes can be really defined any way you want, generally moving from sort of low to high on it could be value, it can be price, it can be effort, it can be cost, but very helpful if you get those quadrants right. In this case, really in this example, look at the high value, low effort, and a bunch of stars. That's where you want to be. The high value, high effort. Yeah, there's a big star there, but it takes it's a bigger investment to get there. But so it is a great way of helping organizations and teams quickly come to what should our priorities be, where do they fit, which ones can we discard quickly and easily, which ones do we need to do more work on. So those are 2 very helpful tools that we work with clients all the time to help them with their strategic planning. This won't fully develop a strategic plan, but it'll certainly help with some of the important elements of it. So strategy summary for boards of directors and strategic planning. Strategic planning is a primary governance board role, right? If you're a governance board, right, 3 roles of that board: risk, strategy, and performance management, the CEO. All 3 are related, and strategy is vital. And number 2, validate and approve, but don't do it. As I say, we're not seeing that as much anymore, where boards are driven to want to do the plan themselves. They are becoming more comfortable letting the management team, others provide recommendations, and that's good. Measure and follow up. As I say, there's just no point in doing a plan if we're not going to follow up and ensure that happens. And that sounds like a no-brainer. It's still very common to see organizations who put a lot of time and effort into developing a strategic plan and then do nothing with it. So it's worth keeping in mind that following up is important. And then the final thing, I'm going to come back to it. We believe this with respect to the role of the board. We believe this with respect to strategic planning. Better to keep it simple. Right? If you go back to that chart where I showed mission, strategic priorities, and annual operating plans, get those 3 things right. And even if it only, as I said before, ends up being a 1-pager, being really clear on those 3 elements, a well understood plan equals better execution and results. And we've seen lots of really good looking binders and tons of work that sit on shelves. And especially from a board perspective, that's really, plans like that are very difficult for boards to know how to manage, to know how to measure. And, keeping strategic plans simple so that the organization understands them well and the board understands it well, frankly, is very helpful in terms of achieving better execution. Thank you very much. My name is Jim Crocker at Boardroom Metrics. Our website is boardroommetrics.com, and happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.